And we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to this April session of In the Know for beginning farmer and ranchers. My name is Will Fett, and I'm with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. These beginning farmer rancher In the Know sessions are a joint project from 4 different USDA agencies. So you'll hear a number of different pieces of hopefully useful information for you and get to interact with representatives from the 4 different agencies that are on today's call. And then towards the end, we'll have some breakout rooms that you can ask individual questions to those USDA representatives. So really appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you and to visit with you all this afternoon. So for the purpose of today's session, we are going to have a little bit of a focus on crop production. Now, a lot of the things that we're going to go over do have broader applicability. So if you're not a crop producer, that's probably okay. You can still gain some information and insight on how USDA programs work. But for the purpose of today's session, we're going to give some examples and try to focus in a little bit on crop production. So I'm going to kick things off with NRCS programs, and then we'll hear from the Farm Service Agency, from Rural Development, from the Risk Management Agency, and then, as I mentioned, towards the end, go into those breakout rooms for some question and answer sessions. So first off, the Natural Resource Conservation Service offers technical assistance and financial assistance. We really view ourselves as being a technical partner in being able to share knowledge and wisdom and tools to have good conservation practices implemented on the ground and help individual agricultural productions be more sustainable. But we know implementing conservation programs does take some financial investment. And so we can also partner and provide some of that financial assistance to landowners. The types of financial assistance that we can provide really fall into 3 buckets. And I like to think of them as long-term, intermediate, and then short-term buckets. And the long-term financial assistance would be our agriculture conservation easement programs. You might be familiar with other easement programs, but this is simply a way of having some long-term sustainability, be that for agricultural production or wildlife enhancement or other purposes deemed by the landowner. And we can be a partner in that. The Conservation Stewardship Program is kind of our mid-tier financial assistance program, typically with 5-year contracts that build on and capitalize on the conservation work that you might already be doing on your production operation. And then the short-term opportunity is probably our most common and most widely known, and that is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And that can be anywhere between 1 and 5 years, usually on the lower end of that 1 to 3 years, addressing individual resource concerns and really helping you to increase the sustainability and address those individual items. So the way that this kind of works is that it starts off with a planning process. You would be connected with a district conservationist in your local area. We have an office in every county. And that district conservationist is going to talk about your goals and help develop a plan. Then we move to application, and those are deadline driven, but we do accept applications year round. We'll do some eligibility checks, and then your application will be ranked against other applicants just to ensure that it's a quality project. And unfortunately, funding is limited, so we're not able to fund all applications, but we do fund a significant number of applications. So please don't self-eliminate. Please consider your project an opportunity to partner with us and get good conservation on the ground. And then we're also there with you through implementation. So we help get the conservation on the ground, whether that be through specific field days or technical help. We are going to be a partner throughout that. Now, There are program deadlines, as I mentioned, and for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, our deadline is typically in November. So at any time during the year, you can apply, but you probably won't see your application move forward until after that deadline in November. And the idea here is that we want to prepare you and set you up best for the next growing season so that there's some planning time in the winter months there. The deadline for the Conservation Stewardship Program, we just passed. It was March 29th this year. But because you're building on pre-existing conservation practices, the seasonality of that one isn't quite as tied to the cropping year. Now, we encourage you to kind of get us into your email mailbox and sign up for Gov Delivery, which is our email notification system that will really help you stay attuned to those different deadlines. Beginning farmers are part of what we can call historically underserved, and historically underserved producers do get special benefits through a lot of our conservation programs. Specifically, those include higher payment rates. If we're contracting a financial obligation with you, it is anywhere between 10 and 15% higher typically than contract with a not historically underserved, so kind of a traditional farmer. You can also be eligible for advanced payments. Up to 50% of the financial assistance can come at the beginning of the contract rather than as a reimbursement at the end. And we also have special funding pools for beginning farmers and new customers, which gives you priority access for a lot of our funding that is available. Now, once the contract is obligated, we go into implementation, and that typically happens March to May to start that process. The cost share, as I mentioned, can be 70 to 85%, in some cases even higher, 90% or more of the specific conservation practice. And we have a payment schedule for each of those conservation practices. So we talk in generalities and broad terms of percentages, and because it does differ for the type of conservation practice that you might be implementing. Typically, that's a 1 to 3 year time frame for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And as I mentioned, there is some additional benefits available to you as beginning farmers or other historically underserved groups. Now, because we're focusing on crops today, I wanted to highlight some of the conservation practices that crop producers, especially beginning farmer crop producers, are very common for and can really take advantage of. Cover crops, irrigation pipeline, reducing pesticide application through precision techniques, irrigation water management, and herbaceous weed treatment. So if you think about a couple of these examples, herbaceous weed treatments, we understand that weeds are a problem that agricultural producers face. And we understand that the management of those weeds helps the long-term sustainability, especially when we're talking about things like invasive weed species on a crop field or on the borders of crop fields. So managing those herbaceous weeds can actually improve wildlife habitat, and it removes those invasives and undesirables. You can establish more good perennial crops along the field borders, and really do some good conservation with managing these weeds. So it's a good tool for you to use. The next conservation practice I want to highlight is cover crops, because the Natural Resource Conservation Service, one of the core things that we were founded on was keeping soil in the place. We were born out of the Dust Bowl, and so having living roots in the soil all year long is one of the things that we truly take to heart and want to see practiced widely. And that includes reducing erosion through wind or water. You're increasing the biodiversity of the soil. You're increasing the soil health and the organic matter. And really, it can't be enough good things said about cover crops. And so we want to help with the seed, the application, the management of those cover crops. And that's part of the financial assistance that we can offer. So I know I kind of quickly glazed over a lot of what NRCS does, and I'll be happy to take more questions at the end, but we want to keep kind of clicking through today's program. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues over at the Farm Service Agency, Derek and Emma.
Perfect. Thank you, Will. So I've got Emma Gabriel here. She's from the Harney County uh, county office through FSA. Normally I go over loans, but you guys feel free to go back into the recordings we have of previous sessions to talk about loans and see what we can offer you on that end. But I really wanted to get into some of the more beginning farmer and rancher facing programs. So I've got Emma Gabriel here today to talk about NAP, or the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program. Of course, that acronym always kind of throws me off because it doesn't quite correlate, but I'll give it over to Emma, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick so we
Thank
can
you,
get
Derek.
started. Yeah, you bet. Hold on one second here. Share this one and start the presentation. There we go. Can we see that?
It's coming, hopefully.
I don't see a share yet, Derek. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there it is.
Perfect. It's just delayed. Okay. And there you go, Emma.
Thank you. So yeah, as Derek said, my name's Emma Gabriel. I'm the CED in Harney and Grant counties for FSA, and we have quite a bit of the NAP program in these two counties. So I'll have Derek go to the next slide and we'll get started. So what is NAP? So it provides financial assistance to producers who have non-insurable crops to protect against natural disasters that result in lower yields, crop losses, or prevented planting. And I say non-insurable crop as in you can't get crop insurance through like RMA, FCIC, any like pilot programs. We can cover some of those crops, but basically we don't want to be in competition with any other crop insurance agency companies. So like native grass for like meadow hay or something like that, we have crop insurance for. We have crop insurance for grazing crops, things like that. So you have to obtain a policy in advance. For most of our crops, the deadline is November 30th of the year of the previous year. So like for 2024 crop insurance, you had to have signed up by November 30th, 2023. You can get two different levels of insurance. The first being just like the basic catastrophic level, 50-55 coverage. And I'll explain that, I think, on the next slide. But the fee for crop insurance is $325 per crop, or up to $825 per county. So if you have 10 crops, we don't make you pay for all 10 of those crops. We cut you off at $825. The exception to this is if you are BFR, beginning farmer rancher, or socially disadvantaged, you meet any of that criteria, then you do not have to pay this service fee. So that is kind of nice. It's free crop insurance. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And so I mentioned that there were two different levels of crop insurance that you can get. And so the basic is the 50-55. So that just means you have to have at least a 50% loss, and you're paid at 55% of the market price. The next option is buy-up coverage, which isn't necessarily on this slide, but I just want to cover it just so you guys are aware there are buy-up options. And so that starts at 60. So you would have to have at least a 40% loss. And that goes down to a 35% loss. So anywhere between a 35 and 40% loss is considered buy-up coverage, and you can be paid at up to 100% of the market price. However, that does come with a premium at the end of that crop year. So it does, where that premium would still come in. You wouldn't have the service fee up front, but you would have a premium. However, you also get a discount on that premium. So it's kind of helpful in that route as well. But basically the life cycle is you have a crop and you want to come in and get coverage on it. And so we try and do that usually in the fall before the crop year. And then we'll get acreage reports done so we know what you have planted on the ground. The national office sends out summary of coverage letters every quarter, and then you would file a loss when you believe you have a loss, and it doesn't, like, if you think you have a 5% loss or 100% loss, like, you can file a loss at any time. For grazing losses, we have specific policy that we have to have independent assessors basically assess what the loss is for the entire county. So grazing is not a producer specific crop for NAP insurance purposes. But I won't get too far into the weeds. This program, you can get really into the weeds and it can get pretty complex. So I'll keep going. But basically we look at your loss, you file your loss, then we would look at doing the application for payment and that whole calculation, and then get payment out the door. Next slide, please. And now we're going to talk about coverage and crops. And so eligibility in order to be able to participate in crop insurance, we have kind of three main eligibility forms for producers. So the first one would be the adjusted gross income form. So you just have to make less than $900,000 based on the 3 prior tax years. And all members of the entity would have to meet that. And then we also have our highly erodible and wetlands form, a 1026. You have to be compliant with that. And then we also have, it's not listed on this page, but a farm operating plan. So that just kind of spells out who is contributing the capital, equipment, labor, management, any land, that sort of thing. And then we also have to have acreage reports. So whether you own it, lease it, whatever the case may be, we just have to have acreage reports on file so we know what crops you have planted and what crops we want you to, or that you want to get insurance on. So next slide, please. So as I kind of covered before, the 2 types of coverage are basic and buy-up. And like this says, grazing policies are only available at the basic level. So it would have to be greater than a 50% loss. Next slide, please. So I kind of went over this a little bit already as well, but like I said, $325 per crop, a maximum of $825 per county. And if you're a multi-county producer, so like Derek's in Malheur, I'm in Harney. So say Derek wants to participate, he's got ground in both counties. He's not going to pay more than the $1,950 per for his operation if he had like 20 crops per se. So, but again, those fees are waived if you are socially disadvantaged or BFR, and you're certifying to that on the 860 form. Next slide, please. So we have a couple of different programs that we don't want to double dip in. One that like insurance, I guess more applicable to insurance, is the PRF pasture rangeland forage program. That I believe is still a pilot program, but regardless, it is not included in the multiple benefit exclusion. So producers are still able to get both payments on that program. I don't know a whole lot about PRF, but if people want to get that and our grazing insurance, they definitely can. Yeah, we'll go next slide. I don't think that's really applicable. So eligible crop means any commercial, agricultural crop, commodity, or acreage of a commodity grown for food or fiber, and commercial or industrial crops for which crop insurance, excluding pilot coverage, is not available. So again, we just don't want to compete. If you bring a crop to us that we don't have in our crop table, it's not the end of the world. We can definitely do our research to see if that is available through other crop insurance. And if it's not, then we can do the work to get that added to our crop table. So please don't be afraid to come in and ask. Next slide, please. So ineligible crops are, again, kind of want to hammer this home, crops that are eligible through other crop insurance. Byproducts resulting from processing or harvesting eligible crops like peanut hay or straws from grain crops. Non-ornamental nursery plants, home gardens, experimental crops, volunteer stands, livestock, and their byproducts, first year seeded biennial and perennial forage. So like we don't cover first year seeded alfalfa. Immature orchards or replacement crop acreage planted after prevent plant or field crop acreage in the same crop year. Next slide, please. So you have to file the application for coverage by the sales closing date. So I mentioned that November 30th date. That's not all of our crops, but that is a good chunk of them. I can get anybody a fact sheet that has those dates if you would like to know those. And service fees for NAP can only be paid by check. For some reason, this program just hasn't caught up to the others that we can use debit cards for, but so I just want to throw that out there. The CCC 860 form is our certification for BFR, SDA folks. So that can also be used as an application for coverage for NAP. That has been updated since this slideshow has been updated. So there's a new section on the 860 that it requests that you opt out of it. So if you sign that and you don't check that box that you want to opt out, then that means the county office should be loading that for your crop insurance if you have eligible crops. So next slide, please. Okay, crop losses. So what is an eligible loss? So to qualify for assistance, you have to have had a loss that would include the cause being any of these: drought, excessive moisture, tornadoes, excessive wind, earthquake. Hopefully we don't have any volcanic eruptions, hail, freeze, hurricane, lightning, flood. Next slide, please. And then these are all like a secondary cause of loss. So like in Harney County last year, we had a ton of grasshoppers move in. And so we basically attribute that to it's due to drought, it's dry conditions. So grasshoppers are moving in. So we want to have that initial cause of loss, like drought, for instance, and then you can file for insects as a secondary cause of loss, but you have to have that initial if you're going to add one of these onto it. Next slide, please. So an ineligible cause of loss would be if you're not doing good farming practices, or like failure or breakdown of irrigation equipment, weeds, your neighbor's herbicide drifted to your property, inadequate irrigation, or failure to harvest or market the crop because of a lack of a plan. So like these are all kind of, man-made reasons for a loss. So those are all ineligible. Next slide, please. So this kind of is more focused on grazing crops, but as I mentioned earlier, if at any point you feel that you have a loss on your crop, whether you think it's above or below 50%, does not matter. It does not hurt you to file a notice of loss. So please you can do it over the phone. We can get that loaded and then have you sign that within 30 days. So just please go ahead and call. Do not hesitate to call us and let us know that you have a loss. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll kind of get into payments. So we have to have the application for payment filed no later than 60 calendar days after the coverage period ends for the crop. So this is just kind of a random example in Jefferson County in Central Oregon, and this is for grazing. But the normal harvest date for native non-irrigated grazing is October 15th. So that's the end of the coverage period. So the application for payment deadline would be December 14th. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like for meadow hay in Harney County, I think the final harvest date is like September 15th. And so our deadline is in November for that. But we do have our county committees. They have the authority to grant a 120-day extension on top of that. And I will say, like in my county, for example, we do use that quite often, just with the amount of workload and whatnot, and just producers trying to get everything wrapped up for the year and get production, and we do use that quite often. But yeah, that's kind of the application for payment deadline. But basically at the end of the year, you just want to make sure you turn in your production each year so we can build your actual production history, which builds your personal yield, which goes into your payment calculation. So next slide, please. One thing I do want to add is that if you have like a total loss, let's say grasshoppers came in and just wiped out your whole triticale pivot, so you're not going to get any crop on it. We want to make sure we get an appraiser out there to appraise what's left of it before you decide to basically like till it up and replant something else. It's very important that you either harvest the crop and give us the production, or if you're not going to harvest it, that we get an appraiser out there on the ground. So those are two very important things. But yeah, NAP is just one of our programs that we have that offer some extra benefit to beginning farmer ranchers. Another one is the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, and that offers up to 90% cost share instead of the traditional 60%. So just don't be afraid to call your county offices and get some more information, and kind of reach out and let us know what you need. But that's all I have for today.
Perfect. Thank you, Emma. And again, I'm going to basically parrot what Emma said. A lot of this comes down to communicating with your local county office, talking to them, making sure you're getting all your reports in, like your crop reports, and having a good kind of go in between with them. They're going to be the ones that can help you the most. Now, one last thing before Emma and I jump off here, we're not going to be available for the Q&A, but again, just to hammer it home, you guys are always welcome to reach out to us. You can reach out to Will. He can get us in contact with you if you have any other questions. I'm more on the loan side. Emma's more on the program side, and there's a lot of difference there. Truth be told, I don't know a lot about the programs, but when it comes to loan, I know a thing or two. But if I can't get the answer, I'll find it for you. So again, thank you guys for the time. Thank you, Will. We're going to have to jump off here, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to Will and he'll get us in contact. I thank you all for the time.
Derek and Emma, thank you so much. Erica, while you share your screen, there was one quick question for FSA in the chat. Is NAP available in all counties in Oregon? You might have said it, but I missed it.
Yes, it definitely is. And the crops just kind of, I guess, are different for each county. Like in Malheur County, we can't do alfalfa for seed insurance through NAP, but we can in Harney County. So it just kind of depends. But yes, it is available in each county. Just go ahead and give your local county office a call and see if that crop that you're thinking of is eligible.
Thank you both very much. And we'll turn it over to Erica with Rural Development for some of their programs. Erica?
Yeah, hi. I think that my screen is showing our VAPG fact sheet.
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hello. Again, my name is Erica Knight, and I am the Business and Cooperative Programs Specialist with the USDA Rural Development, located out of our Portland, Oregon office. Today, the theme of our BFR in the Know program is crops. So I have two grant programs to discuss with y'all that I think would be relevant to a crop producer. And the first is the value added producer grant. This is my wheelhouse. This is the program that I manage, review for eligibility, scoring, all that. So I'm going to be a lot more familiar with this grant program for our Q&A session. And then the second one I want to discuss is our Rural Energy for America, also known as REAP grant, which is for energy and energy efficiency technology like solar, wind power, those types of technologies to install or build on your property. So anyways, let's talk about VAPG first. I apologize for not having a PowerPoint like the other presenters, but We're going to have to make do with this. And I can also provide these fact sheets to everybody after the like during the Q&A session. So the VAPG program is intended to help agricultural producers in both rural and non-rural areas enter into value-added activities related to the processing and marketing of value-added products. So this in relation to crops would be, for example, corn into flour. Let's see, what are some other examples? Well, the most common I think that we see here in Oregon is grapes into wine. That is considered a value-added activity, but we also consider things like organic crops to be considered value-added. So you can use you can apply for this grant if you're selling any organic crop, and that would qualify you under this program. This grant is eligible to independent producers, agricultural producer groups, farmer or rancher cooperatives, and majority controlled producer-based business ventures. The most common applicant type is an independent producer. That's your, see, actually, I'm right here. That is just your typical farmer or rancher. The others are kind of self-explanatory. This one is a group of independent producers. This one's just a cooperative, and then a majority controlled producer-based business is a business that isn't 100% made up of farmers. Maybe there's a couple of passive investors in there, but at least 50% are considered a farmer or a rancher. Grant funds can be used for planning activities or working capital activities. There are 2 different grant application toolkits for each one of these tracks. If you're in the beginning phases of thinking about starting a business or I guess creating a value-added product, you'll probably want to consider going the planning grant route, because this will help pay for a full-blown feasibility study and a business plan to be developed on your behalf, which then you can use when applying for the working capital grant. The working capital grant pays for the implementation of the processing of a value-added product, and part of that application toolkit is a feasibility study. So this is it's a cool opportunity where you can apply for a grant to help pay for the feasibility study, which then you piggyback on the working capital grant for a bigger amount. The working capital grant is up to $250,000. There is well, before I move on, I'm going to talk about the expenses that are eligible. So for planning, it's really only one thing that you can use grant funds for, and that is to pay a consultant to develop the feasibility study and marketing and business plan. The working capital grant or the implementation grant can help pay for processing costs, marketing and advertising expenses, and then additional inventory and salary expenses. Inventory means raw commodity. So whatever your raw commodity is, let's just say in this case, grapes, you can use grant funds to pay for up to 49% additional raw commodity. It can't be starter plants or anything like that. It has to be the ready to process product, but you can purchase grapes from a neighboring farm and then have them crushed to add to your supply of the value-added product, which would be wine. Let's see. So two things I want to say about this grant is that it is a 1-to-1 match requirement. However, the match does not need to be cash, 100% cash. It can be, and if it is, then you would actually score slightly higher points during the scoring criteria phase. But the cool thing about this grant is that you can actually match up to 100% of your funds as in kind. In kind means a lot of different things for a lot of different grants or financial jargon, but for this grant, it's one of two things. The first is the value of your raw commodity. So the value of the grapes before they're processed. You can calculate how many grapes you will use per, it's usually measured in tons, that you will be using for the project, and use that as your match. And or you can use the value of owner or owner family member labor spent on eligible processing and marketing activities. Now that in-kind match is limited or capped at 25% of the total project cost, but it does allow you to essentially apply for this $250,000 grant with putting $0, zero cash dollars into it. So that is the first point I want to make. And then the second is that this is a reimbursement-based grant, so you have to spend the money and then provide receipts, and we will reimburse the 50% of the amount until the grant is finished. And that's why, and yeah, sometimes people don't realize that, and then they get far enough along and then they're like, oh, geez, I didn't realize that I had to spend the money first. So I just wanted to put that out there. I highly recommend, well, it's actually funny. The deadline for this grant is today. So if you're just hearing about this grant for the first time, I still encourage you to get in contact with me for next year, because it is just such a cool opportunity for beginning farmers and ranchers. And most of our projects that come in are crops. We do get like meat products as well, but mostly crops. So get in contact with me. It says down here, contact your nearest RD office, but my information will be put in the chat. And I'm your direct contact for this program. And now I'm going to move over to the second grant program that Rural Development offers that would be interesting or relevant for a crop producer. And that is the REAP grant, Rural Energy for America program, Rural Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency grant. So this program provides both grants and loan guarantees to ag producers and rural small businesses to purchase and or install renewable energy systems or make energy efficiency improvements. So if you're an ag producer, you can be in a rural or a non-rural area, but at least 50% of your gross income needs to come from agricultural operations. Also, small non-agricultural businesses in eligible rural areas are eligible. The funds can be used to purchase, install, and construct renewable energy systems such as biomass. I would say the most common one for this demographic would be the anaerobic digesters, which is used to convert manure into methane and then energy burned from the methane. Geothermal hydropower, hydrogen, small and large wind, and then small and large solar, which is, again, solar is the most common renewable energy system that we see in the Pacific Northwest, at least. Ocean tidal, not as common. I think you'd have a hard time getting permission to do that as a ag producer. And then funds can also be used to purchase and install the energy efficiency improvements. This can be high efficiency heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, insulation, lighting, cooling, or refrigeration units, which is a big one. And then update doors and windows to more. Wait, where did that go? Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Doors and windows to more energy efficient doors and windows. So for energy efficiency improvements, you have to already have these things installed, but they have to be inefficient. You can't install brand new refrigeration units if you don't already have existing units in your facility. So that's the kicker for the energy efficiency improvements. However, for renewable energy systems, this category up here, these can all be brand new construction. You don't need to have any pre-existing solar, for example, to upgrade. You just install brand new. Renewable energy system grants $2,500 minimum and a $500,000 maximum, and then energy efficiency grants are $1,500 minimum and a $250,000 maximum. You must provide at least 75% of the project cost if you're applying for a grant only. So that means that you would get a 25% grant. And then for a loan grant combo, or if you're applying for a loan, the applicant is responsible for 25% of the project cost. Let's see. So as mentioned in the beginning, I'm not the lead for this grant. The lead for this grant is named Serena. And if you would like her contact info in the Q&A, I can provide that for you. So thanks for listening, y'all.
Thanks very much, Erica. And we'll go ahead and kick it over to Anna for Risk Management Agency.
Yes, thank you. Let me pull up my presentation. Now, can you all see me or see the presentation okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm just going to introduce myself real quickly, and then I'll get started with this presentation. So good afternoon to everyone. My name is Anastasia Griffin, and I have been with the Risk Management Agency for over 9 years now, and I work in the Spokane Regional Office. And we mostly do crop insurance, but we do other outreach things as well. So before I get started with the actual presentation, I'm just going to go over this disclaimer with you all real quick. So the purpose of the following material is to promote awareness of risk management concepts and to highlight USDA's risk management products, features, benefits, and availability. This material does not change the content or the meaning of current policy provisions, filed actuarial documents, or approved procedures. So again, I'm from the USDA Risk Management Agency's Spokane Regional Office, and we administer the federal crop insurance programs in Alaska, Oregon, and Washington. We also provide outreach to help farmers with risk management tools. RMA's vision is to secure the future of agriculture by providing world-class risk management tools to rural America. RMA is responsible for developing and maintaining federal crop insurance policies. This includes determining the rates, prices, and yields for each crop at the county level every year. RMA is also in charge of compliance to prevent fraud or abuse. Private insurance companies and agents are responsible for selling insurance policies to farmers and settling the claims. The federal government subsidizes premiums to reduce the cost of crop insurance for farmers and reinsures the private insurance companies to share the cost of the claims. Federal crop insurance provides protection from production loss, price decline, or a combination of both for individual commodities. There are production and revenue plans of insurance, which are based on a farmer's actual production history. Area plans of insurance that are based on averages in an area, such as by county, are also available. And as we heard earlier today, the Farm Service Agency also has the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, known as NAP, that is available in the counties where RMA crop insurance is not available. This provides financial assistance to producers of non-insured crops to protect against natural disasters that result in lower yields, crop losses, or prevented planting. So why should you consider getting federal crop insurance for your farm or your ranch? It may help you stay in business after a bad weather event or a low production year. The government subsidizes the premium, as I mentioned before, to make it more affordable. And this crop insurance provides some financial stability and may improve access to credit. Organically grown crops are covered under the crop insurance program as long as recognized organic farming practices are used. Production-based policies ensure against yield losses due to natural causes such as adverse weather, wildlife, insects, and disease. If the harvested, plus any appraised, production is less than the yield insured, the producer is paid an indemnity based on the difference. Revenue policies provide protection against price decline or increase, or a combination of both, in addition to yield losses. Projected and harvest prices are used to establish your coverage and to determine whether you have a loss. There is additional premium cost for this added coverage. There are 4 phases of the crop insurance cycle each year. The insurance plan, level of coverage, and price are selected when you submit an application. It is important to know the sales closing and cancellation dates. These are deadlines for buying or canceling your policy. There's also a date for reporting how many acres of the crops you plant to determine your premium. You have to provide a notice of loss to start the claim process. RMA may make program changes prior to the next year's contract change date. Farmers can select their coverage level for crop insurance ranging from 50% to 85% of the yield and between 50 and 100% of the price election. The lowest level of coverage is catastrophic insurance, also known as CAT coverage. It covers 50% of yield and 55% of price election. There's only an administrative fee of $655 in each county per crop for CAT insurance. CAT coverage is similar to the FSA's NAP program. And now I just wanted to mention, we do have multiple different crop policies, multi-peril crop policies, but I'm just going to highlight today 2 particular programs that we have. The one is called Whole Farm Revenue Protection, and the other one is Micro Farm. So just know that we do have many more crop programs available depending on the crop that you are producing. So Whole Farm Revenue Protection is available nationwide and insures all commodities produced on your farm with a few exceptions for forestry and sport or pet animals. Coverage is based on your allowable revenue determined by your previous federal income tax returns, your Schedule F. Specialty and organic crops and livestock are covered. However, there is a $2 million limit for animals and nursery. Whole farm protects against loss of revenue from all commodities produced on your farm. This includes decline in production, price, or quality from unavoidable natural causes. There is also provisions for replant or if you're unable to plant. If your farm is diversified by growing 2 or more commodities, you may qualify for a premium rate discount called a diversification discount. This also reduces the cost of your insurance premium. If you are a beginning farmer or rancher, you only need 3 years of tax records. To insure for the 2024 crop year, for example, you had to have farmed in 2023 and have filed Schedule F forms for 2020, 2021, and 2022. There is also an extra 10% premium subsidy for beginning farmers and ranchers. And now for microfarm. So microfarm is essentially a crop provision under whole farm revenue protection. And in our region and for Oregon, it has a sales closing date of April 15th for calendar year filers and for early fiscal year filers. The other sales closing date would be November 20th for late fiscal year filers. If you meet the eligibility requirements at the sales closing date and you elect to purchase coverage under these microfarm provisions, these provisions will be attached to and made part of the whole farm revenue protection provisions. So different from whole farm, under microfarm, there is one single commodity code for all commodities under microfarm. Also different from whole farm, the history period is consecutive tax years prior to the policy year with a minimum of 3 years. Microfarm is tailored for any farm with up to $350,000 in revenue from agricultural commodities, including farms with specialty or organic commodities, both crops and livestock, or those marketing to local, regional, farm identity preserved specialty or direct markets. Market readiness and post-production operations such as canning, freezing, and processing activities can be included in your allowable revenue and will be used when calculating your farm's insurance guarantee under microfarm. Revenue from sources other than agricultural commodities such as bottled water or souvenir sales must be removed from that allowable revenue. And so that's just a little bit of an introduction for those two particular programs. But again, as I said, depending on what you are producing, we may or may not have a program for that. And as I mentioned before, because RMA is a public-private partnership, the best way to get started would be to find an agent. So what I have here on the screen is actually a screenshot of our website. You have there the address on the top left-hand corner. It's rma.usda.gov. And so there is a lot of information on our RMA website. So as I mentioned, the first step for crop insurance would be to locate a crop insurance agent. So on our website, you can actually find one by clicking on the tools button there at the top. I have it circled in red, and that will bring up the list of tools. And then I circled again underneath that what we call the agent locator. And so you select the agent locator, and then once there, you go in and enter in your location. And then we have some other options for different languages, different specializing in different products and crops. And you can find one that's close by to where you're located. And then I also wanted to point out that we do have a specific part of our website that is designed for beginning farmers and ranchers. And so I have that circled on the right-hand side in yellow, and that just, if you click on that Get Started button under the Beginning Farmers section, that will take you to all of the information that we have specifically for beginning farmers and ranchers. And then if you're interested in that whole farm revenue protection program, we have some FAQs and fact sheets and other information there And that's circled in green under the whole farm revenue protection link right there under highlighted initiatives. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention and point out to everyone is that we do have specific benefits that I touched on earlier that are designed particularly for beginning farmers and ranchers. So I mentioned the additional 10% premium subsidy that beginning farmers and ranchers are eligible for. And we also have an exemption from the administrative fee for the catastrophic coverage or CAT policies. And again, this is similar to what you might be eligible for as a beginning farmer and rancher for NAP coverage from FSA. And then we do have a few other benefits that are specifically designed for assisting those beginning farmers and ranchers in particular crop policy programs. So this is kind of just a general overview. There's a lot more information. I'm going to have my particular information. We've got our phone number there, our address, our website up there, but also feel free to send me an email. Like I said, most of the actual work of coming up with the crop insurance that you would want is going to be done with your crop insurance agent. But of course, I'm always available for help. And if you need any, if you have any questions for accessing that agent locator tool, I am available for that. And any other questions that you might have. So with that, I think I've got everything that we need. And again, if you have any questions, I'm always available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. So as we wrap up today's session, I want to make a couple of announcements, and then we'll open up the breakout rooms. First announcement, this is not a USDA program, but I just dropped in the chat a link to the Ag West Farm Credit grant opportunity for beginning farmers. So you'll want to check that out. It is a $15,000 grant, and the deadline is May 31st if you're interested in applying. And then the second link and resource that I'll put in the chat is to a webinar series for beginning farmers who are military veterans. The first of those is coming up next week on April 23rd. And it's a great opportunity to learn even more about the programs that USDA has to offer. And that series is going to be specifically for military veterans. So if you have any questions about USDA programs, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Will Fed, and I'm the Beginning Farmer Rancher Coordinator for USDA Oregon. And specifically, I am the Outreach Coordinator for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So today's session was focused on crops. Our July Beginning Farmer in the Know session is going to focus on livestock. And then our October session will focus on specialty crops and urban and small farms. So please join us again for those upcoming sessions. But at any point, feel free to reach out. I'm going to stop the recording and open up the breakout rooms.